Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 1 of a series on getting tattooed. During this series, we're going to go all the way from, today, talking about, some things to keep in mind on deciding, what you want or if you should be getting a tattoo, all the way up into post-tattoo of, skincare, things to keep in mind regarding that, and everything in between. Some subcategories that are going to kind of play a part in this that are also going to be incorporated in these specific tattoo episodes are calisthenics and plant foods, and you'll kind of see how they tie in, but just know that those are going to sort of be a sub-theme throughout this. But also, there's going to be some separate videos on those topics themselves, so if you just want the tattoo-specific content, make sure you look for, just like this video, how it says tattoo episode so-and-so. Alright, a couple things to keep in mind before we start is that, I'm not a tattoo artist. I'm just a huge fan of tattoos. I don't have a ton, but I have a few. So I'm hoping that, I'm able to shed some light and hopefully help out people who are, kind of thinking of, do I want one? Do I not want one? And just sort of go through, my own experience and hopefully, give some tips and tricks and things to sort of keep in mind that are going to help you guys out as well. Today we're going to talk about 5 different areas of deciding what you want. And the first is going to be what? Figuring out what it is that you want. The second is going to be location, figuring out where on your body that you want that tattoo. The third is going to be color and style. So we're going to talk a little bit about some things to keep in mind when it comes to deciding if you want it to be a color tattoo or black and white. The fourth being the story behind it, which will make more sense when we get there. And the fifth being, kind of ironically, since I'm talking to you about tattoos, but being careful who you listen to when they talk about tattoos. And then in the next episode, we'll get more into planning and the things that sort of come after this. Alright, so let's start. Let's start with the what. So figuring out what it is that you want. Now when it comes to what, there's a lot to think about, right? Like, people are going to get quotes done, or people are going to get images, and there's different styles, and there's all these things to sort of keep in mind. But let's backtrack even from there. Let's take a step back and let's kind of think about this just for a minute. Before you even get to like what specifically it is, you want it to encompass something that's everlasting for you, something that's always going to be a part of who you are, of your passion, of your interests, of your beliefs, and you really want it to be ingrained into your value system and into your concept of yourself. And there's all of these different areas of identity, and I'm not going to get really far into it, but it's things to think about when you're sort of planning to get a tattoo, because it should really encapsulate the very identity of who you are as a person on a deep level. Like, it's going to be on you forever. In the same breath, though, you also want it to balance with being visually appealing. As much as it would be nice to just be like, the meaning is all that matters behind what it is, it's a piece of art, a piece of visual art. So you also want to make sure that you're not so ingrained into the idea of what it needs to mean that there's no flexibility on how it can look, because you want it to flow with the body and to look visually appealing while it also encapsulates the thing that you want it to mean, or the meaning behind it. So I encourage you to, before you even get to the point of thinking of what specifically you want it to be, I would try to think about if you're at a place where you have ideas and a solid kind of self-concept, and you can think of, and then you can think of some things that kind of blossom out of that could become beautiful pieces of art, or words that really encapsulate part of who you are. And then start to kind of play with the idea of how could that look visually. If you're going on kind of down the lines of a quote, there's not a ton of leeway, because if it's words, but you could still play with, what type of print that you want it to be, or if you want images kind of with it, or how you want it to flow, or sort of how it goes with the body. Images is where it gets a little bit more complicated, because it's totally up to you. Like, you can figure out how you want this concept to be displayed by an image. And this sort of ties into number 2 of location. Location is really important, and this is something I hear all the time of people being like, I want to get bigger, I want to get more muscles before I get tattooed, because I don't want it to stretch if I get larger. I want to make sure that I'm sort of grown before I get tattooed. Or vice versa, people will kind of be like, I want to lose some weight before I get tattooed so that doesn't look weird if I lose some body fat. And this is important, and this is where kind of the calisthenics and plant foods are going to sort of tie in, is I think that's a valid thing to think about. You know, if I'm going to paint a picture, I'm going to spend time figuring out the canvas that's going to be best and figuring out, you know, how to make sure that that painting stays on it and flows with it and works with the canvas that I'm using. So I think it's important to think about the canvas in which your tattoo or your, you know, the art is going to be put on. So take some time, like look at yourself. I encourage you to like stand in front of a mirror, close off, see how, you know, picture in your mind and look at yourself of like, where is this going to go and how is it going to flow and you know, how is this going to work with my body and get to the point where it's like you're stoked on it. You're stoked on how you look. You're stoked on how, you know, it's going to work with you. And I'm not saying like you need to do calisthenics and eat and all this sort of stuff to get to that point. You're probably already there. And I'm like, just love the way that you look no matter who you are and what your kind of body size is before you kind of start to work with where it's going to go and all these sorts of things. So I encourage you, you know, look at yourself, check out, like find out how this canvas and where this is going to flow with the canvas that's being used. And we'll kind of get more into sort of specifics of, you know, like if I, for instance, like for my arm, it's like I wanted to have a balance of not too much hypertrophy, but not too little you know, muscle tissue there before I got it done. And, you know, there's reasons for that. So we'll kind of get more into the nitty gritty of that a little bit later on. All right, so let's keep moving forward. Number 3, color and style. Now, this is another big thing to think about of, do you want it to have color, like full color? Do you want it to be black and white? Or do you want it to be somewhere in between of mainly black and white with some color pops? Or how do you want it to look? And with that, you know, what kind of style do you want? Do you want it to be sort of like new age? Do you want it to be, you know, traditional, photorealism? There's a handful of different types of styles, and artists are going to have kind of their own sort of niche of what they're good at. So it's something to think about because that's going to help guide you in finding your artist, which is going to be a part of planning or in episode 2. We'll also talk a little bit more about styles a little bit later on, but I encourage you, if you're thinking about this, to start to do some research and to pay attention of the different styles and if there's one that you're sort of connecting with more. Now, if you've gotten this far and you know you have this concept of something that means a lot to you and you have an idea of how that's going to look or, you know, a quote or whatever it might be that's going to work with that, and you know you're starting to think about like the style and the color and, you know, where it's going to flow on the body and all these sorts of things, I encourage you to not get kind of like a perfectionist mentality on it, because how it looks in your head is probably never going to be exactly how you're able to describe it with words to another person and then how they're going to interpret it and then draw it, right? So if I have this like idea in my head of exactly how I want something to look and then I try to explain it to my artist, it's going to be extremely challenging unless I have I find, you know, a perfect reference, and then even then it can come across a little bit different, or the artist is probably going to want to put their spin onto it. And, you know, I'll give a huge shout out to Jerry Eyre in Creston, BC, because he's done all of my tattoos, and you know, I'll have an image or something or a concept in my head of what I want to get done, and then he'll take that and make it even better than how I viewed it in my mind. And that's so important. I think it's so crucial to find an artist you connect with that can do that, where it's like you have an idea that you're stoked on, and then they can turn it into something that you're even more stoked on compared to what you even viewed in your head. So I think that's huge. And also to have the flexibility of being open to chatting with the artist about it and kind of seeing like, you know, they're the artists. They're the ones who are going to be doing it. Listen to them. Pay attention to like what they say and how they think something's going to flow. And, you know, they've been doing this thing, you know, potentially for a long time or potentially not a long time, but there's a reason they're doing it. And, you know, there should be a reason that you chose that artist to do the tattoo that you're getting done. All right, more on that next time, but let's keep moving along. Number 4, the story behind it. And what I'm meaning here is the level of comfortability that you have behind the concept or what you're getting done. You know, if you get something done that's kind of this idea of everlasting or super meaningful to you, you need to make sure you're in a place where you're comfortable talking to, you know, an artist or potentially like a stranger about what it is and kind of the idea behind it. When it comes to just like people asking you of like, oh, I love your tattoos, like what do they mean or whatever else, you can lie. Like you could just make something up and no one's going to know the difference. You can sort of keep the deep meaning to yourself. But when it comes to your artist, I recommend that you're at a place where you're comfortable enough to really go into detail behind why it's so meaningful to you, because they might be able to come up with ideas and really encapsulate it in a way that potentially you didn't see before, and it can become something really beautiful. So that's something to sort of think about, is are you at a place where you're comfortable talking about the meaning behind what you want to get done? All right, lastly, talking to others, and it's very ironic because I'm kind of talking to you about tattoos, but be careful about who you talk to when it comes to, trying to decide if you want to get a tattoo or if your idea is good or not or whatever it might be. Because, I would try to find people who are genuine fans, who have quite a few tattoos done and who've done them in a relatively smart manner. And artists, tattoo artists themselves are amazing people to talk to about it. Because if you talk to just like your friend who, got drunk one night, had a cool idea for it, and then the next day when they're all hungover and feeling like shit, just went to like a walk-in place, and it was somewhere where they didn't connect with the artist and they didn't see eye to eye on whatever it was, but they just went through with it anyways, and now they have this tattoo that they don't like and it's basically entirely their fault. They're probably gonna bias how they tell you about tattoos according to make themselves look a little bit better. So it's human nature, but just be careful with that, because they might almost word it in a way that's discouraging to getting a tattoo at all, but really it's because they kind of went through the process and not really the best way. So I would be hesitant with taking advice from people who might be in those situations, and rather people who are genuine fans and have experience kind of getting tattoos and going through the process in sort of a more methodical or strategic or positive way. All right, we're going to leave it there. I won't ramble on anymore. So that's the end of episode 1. And on next episode, we're going to move into planning. So you've decided, I want to get a tattoo. I have an idea of what I want, sort of the things we talked about today. Now, what's next? How do I plan this? And, we'll go into the aspects of what that's going to look like before you go to an artist and pitch your idea to them or go and just get it done. There's still more steps before you get there. Trust me. So this is the end of episode 1. I encourage you to subscribe so that you don't miss the upcoming episodes if this was helpful for you. And also, I really want you to send in your thoughts and questions. If there's things that I'm missing or there's things that you have questions about that you want to make sure that I sort of chat about down the line before, we get to the point where I'm like, yeah, you're golden. You've worked through all of this. Now, go get it done. Make sure you let me know so that I can include those in the upcoming videos. All right, so until next time, spend some time thinking about the things that we talked about today and starting to figure out, what you want to get done and how that's going to look for you. If you have any questions, please let me know. And until next time, see ya.